Welcome to When Love Hurts, a podcast that explores the abuse of women by men through women's stories and expert insight.
We break down what abuse really is beyond physical violence and look at its deep emotional, psychological, and societal impact.
This podcast is designed for everyone, survivors, support persons, and professionals.
Let's begin.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. I'm Alison Epp, and I'm here with my co-host, Jo Neal. And joining us, like always, the authors of the book When Love Hurts, Jill Corey and Karen McCandless Davis. In this episode, we are going to be talking about how men's abuse impacts mothering, as well as the deeper dive into post-separation abuse and women's experiences of the legal system. But first, the land acknowledgement.
Let's pause and acknowledge that we are on the unceded territory of the Wisanic people on the far west coast of Canada.
Thank you, Karen.
So today we're going to start our episode talking about mothering. Mothers are so important in our lives. So we just wanted to share some experiences of either being mothered or mothering ourselves as we begin. Alison, you had a good one.
Yeah. I had to take a plane to get out here. And so 1 hour into being away from my family, I get a message from my husband saying that our son decided that he was going to go to the bathroom outside like the dog.
He's going to poop, right? Pooped in the grass.
Yeah,
like the dog.
Within an hour of me being gone. And my husband, he's a saint. He definitely knows how to handle things. But our son decided that this was the opportunity to take advantage of mom being gone, which was just lovely.
Oh, I should mention he's 3.
Yeah.
He's 3. Yeah. Well, I could share an experience of an older child. So I saw my son recently, and he's just moved out of home. And so I was telling him how proud I am of him for doing that. And he stopped and he looked at me and he said, "Mom, I'm really proud of you." I mean, that just it was so lovely. So that's my share.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about our oldest child was really challenging, and he knows that. He really struggled with anxiety, found it really hard to navigate the school system, really, really hard. So just was doing a lot of advocating for him. And I often felt like I must be a really bad mom because my son was really suffering and having such a difficult time. And my partner, Bruce, and father of Luke, was so affirming through all of that. There were just so many times when he just told me what a good job I was doing and that I was a good mom. And it would have been so hard to get through that without that. And we know so often for women, when their partners are abusive, they don't have that support. And it's hard. Kids go through hard things, and it's hard to mother, and we need support in our mothering.
Yeah, it's not all on us.
My mom, who's 95, lives with us now. And I think back a lot to how she mothered me. When I was in elementary school, I always wanted to play soccer with the boys at school, and I did. And I would often get a detention because back then we weren't allowed to play with the boys out on the soccer field. We were meant to be on the, on the safe pavement playing with our little hopscotch, etc. And so every time I got a detention, my mom would come in and advocate for me, and I was never in trouble. Yeah, and I think it was really the beginning of really learning what support and equality and respect for autonomy meant. So appreciate that.
That's really beautiful.
What a hero.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. When women are living with the partners who are abusive, it's definitely impacting their mothering. And women just tell us how they can't really be the parent they might want to be. Yeah. That sometimes they feel like they're being too hard on their kids because they know, if the kids make a lot of noise or make a mess or whatever things kids might do, that he may explode. And so, the woman is doing lots of things to try to minimize the harm by sort of clamping down on the kids, and that feels like she's kind of too hard on them. Or other times women describe that they worry that they're being too soft on their kids because the dad is so hard on the kids. So then they're wanting to be really soft. And so it just doesn't allow the woman to just truly just be authentically the mom that she wants to be. And also just that men who are abusive suck all the attention to them, suck all the energy in the household to them. And so just not always having the focus that she might want for her children because he's demanding so much focus.
Yeah, exactly. And what's often happening is that women end up doing all of the parenting work. At least, most of it. Maybe he does a little bit, but most often she's doing it all, as well as the other household labor. Particularly remember a woman who was made to homeschool her children because her partner wanted that, not because she did. And he never contributed to this. And it was immensely burdensome to her trying to do that. And she had 5 kids.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really, you cannot create an environment that's emotionally safe for your children when their abusive dad or their dad is abusive partner.
Okay.
The abusive partner may use children in different ways through the different phases of the cycle of abuse that we talked about in episode 2. This can be really confusing and chaotic and crazy making for both the kids and the mother.
Right.
Some days he may seem like a really great dad, and some days it may be completely different depending on the phase of the cycle that he's in. Some women share that he's really only abused me, so he is a good dad. He's never touched the kids. And this is really common. Actually, I've heard this quite a lot from women. And this is her speaking out of that dominant discourse.
Right. Yeah.
That deep social belief that he might be only abusive to her, but he's still capable of being a good dad. That is so deeply rooted in the dominant discourse.
Right. And part of being a good dad is behaving in respectful, loving, caring ways to the mother of the children, right?
Exactly.
Not belittling, threatening, intimidating. Like, you can't actually be a good dad and treat the mom in those ways. Right. We would say that would be some language we would use.
Yeah.
Another thing is that the kids might imitate his behavior, right? That the children are seeing that he does certain things to get his way, and they may start doing some of those behaviors. And it's really hard for women. Women get really worried about their children. Sometimes women say, oh, my child's becoming abusive also. And I try to steer women away from thinking that way. If they're the child and you're the parent, you actually do have more power and control.
Yeah.
They're not being abusive. They're using the tactics that their father has taught them. And I think maybe a more helpful way to think of it is that the dad has burdened these children with ideas and attitudes and behaviors. And so they're not always behaving in the way that they would otherwise.
Right.
And I think that's just remembering the dad has burdened the children with these behaviors or these ideas can help the mom stay in that really compassionate place with her kids.
Another way to really think about it is this child is living through that same cycle of abuse that the mother has lived through. And to see that the child is experiencing all that the woman experienced, and for her to be able to put herself into the child's shoes is really they are also surviving in that cycle. And it can be really, really challenging for the child to really know what's up and what's down.
Yeah. And moms have said, like, it took me 10 years to figure him out, right? And so, I have compassion that this is very confusing for my child. And women are always trying to mitigate the harm being done by dad. And in our experience, moms are amazing. And we actually know for the research that women where the dad is abusive, that women are actually more attuned to their children, which makes sense, really, right? Like, if there's a safety issue, you're going to be more attuned. So in our experience, the moms are amazing. They are very attuned, very attached, very loving, very caring towards the kids. And probably they feel like they're failing because no matter what they do, they can't really give the child the safe and warm and loving home that they imagined and dreamed for their child.
Exactly. Yeah. And the stress that they're under, they want to be present for their kids. They want to be calm. They want to feel grounded.
Yeah.
How can they when they never know what they're going to be subject to?
Yeah.
And it's such a double bind that they're put in. Women talk about trying to hide the abuse from the children if they possibly can. They're working so hard to keep the peace so that they can keep themselves safe and keep their children safe. And they often end up questioning their own mothering instincts due to his interference. Again, we've talked about how the abusive man can be so sort of confident in how he speaks, and that undermining, that constant undermining is always there. Again, sort of adding to this feeling that she's not mothering well, that she's not doing a good enough job. I just want to say for listeners who are going through this, that you are doing such a good job under impossible conditions. It's really impossible. And if you can, to focus on this and tell yourself that you are doing a good job. We often can add to our burden by criticizing ourselves. And if we can shift that, it can just be something to help.
I mean, one of the things that we have said here, and we say often, is that abusive men take all the good choices off the table. And so women are only left with either focusing on their kids at the risk of his rage or trying to control the kids to avoid maybe an escalation, which of course is kind of impossible. So she doesn't have the actual choice of mothering the way that she wants to. That is her instinct. And so, you know, I think we hear women feel like they've lost it, but actually you've just had to bury it because it's kind of risky to follow your own gut. Like, so women are just constantly surveying what's the best thing, what's he going to need, and rather than being able to just think about what do the kids need.
And under, you know, and I think undermining her parenting in so many ways, right? Like I think of stories of him intentionally riling the children up at bedtime, keeping them up late, and then they're tired for school, and then she's criticized for not getting them off to school in time. All of those kinds of things, right?
Or they're cranky that at dinner time the next night, and he just walks away and leaves her to deal with it. No good choices.
So that's just a small focus on the impacts of mothering when she's in the relationship. So let's move now to what happens if she is able to leave. What's the impact there?
Well, first of all, the expectation is, and Alison, you said it earlier, that this society doesn't think that he's abusive to the kids, even if we know that or accept that he's been abusive to the woman. And so the expectation is that they co-parent. And for us, that co-parenting is really the dominant discourse code for forced to be in a relationship ongoing with an abuser and negotiate where there's no negotiation, right? Again, women are correcting or countering what he's doing. So a lot of what women experience is that the kids go to him and they come home and she kind of repairs them and gets them ready for the next visit. So she's trying to counter the impacts of the kids being with him. So it's not always joyous and it's not always connected and attached. Sometimes it is just this, like letting the kids decompress and handling some of the backlash of their frustration or their sorrow, and then kind of shoring them up again to go back to this monstrous environment.
I think I wanted to touch on, when you start to read some of the literature that's out there, counter-parenting is actually seen in a really negative light. So it's like, be careful about the counter-parent who's working really hard against one parent and the other. So even if we had a bit of a discussion on when we say counter-parenting, what are we really meaning?
We mean trying to counter some of that controlling, insulting, demeaning lies that he's giving the kids with some of the values that she has of mothering, which is respect and kind of building their self-regard for themselves, so that we're trying to counter the impacts of what they've been witnessing from his control and power.
If there's two children, sometimes abusive men will definitely pick a favorite child, right? There'll be a golden child and then a problematic child. And children come back from their visit with their dad so in such a terrible state, having been played off against each other when they were with dad. So, you know, the repairing, the healing, they're just helping the child to kind of settle again and find themselves again.
I like the word, and I'm going to be the one to start this word.
Okay. You go, Allison.
Repair parenting.
Okay,
I
nice.
love
Beautiful.
that.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I think that's what I hear when you both are describing it. Is it's repairing the
Reparative
damage.
parenting.
Yeah, reparative parenting.
Yeah.
Reparative
You
parenting.
heard it here first.
Absolutely.
And that is absolutely what we hear women doing.
Yeah.
And of course, we will talk later about when systems come in to observe. It can look like women are undermining what he's doing, but actually we know that it's trying to repair, again, build kids up. It's so awful to think that they're just building them up so they can go back.
Yeah.
It's like getting soldiers away from the war field for a few hours and then sending them back
Right,
in. And
exactly.
really, it's just, you can't possibly fully repair them.
Yeah.
And then sometimes the kids really struggle with the mother because it looks like it's her forcing that on them.
Right.
Yeah, and children don't understand, right?
Yeah.
Like just the number of children, women have told us that children who cry and say, I don't want to go to daddy's house, and that mothers can't even explain why this is happening, because if they do, they could get accused of parental alienation, which we're going to talk about later in the
Right.
episode.
So they can't tell kids the truth. And so
Yeah.
everybody's walking around in this complicit silence.
Yeah.
And that's one of the ways that he continues to dominate is that she's forced into silence. I mean, even at this table, we've had lots of discussions about what can get said and not said here.
Right.
As if these invisible abusive men may have a response or a reaction to what we're saying here. So women feel like they can't protect their kids. And I think Karen and I have had many discussions about, in a generation from now, will we look back at this time where kids are being sent to stay with their abusive fathers and think, what kind of primitive practices were we doing back then that we thought it was okay to force kids into those environments? And what is the impact on this generation of children growing up that they were forced by the system to spend that time with their fathers? And so the legal system and other systems that are growing up around the legal system have really removed the right for women to protect their children. And more than that, they're not helping women protect their children.
Right.
And, Jill, I think it's so important for us to say is that do people who've been doing this the longest, that this has not always
Right.
been the case, right? For both you and I, when we started doing this work, what was believed to be in the best interest of the children was that things stay consistent. So if the mother had been the primary caregiver before separation, she'd be the primary caregiver after separation, right? And so we saw these situations when the children would be living with the mom, but having regular time with the dad, right? Every Wednesday night, every other weekend, something like that. And then what we know is that abusive men have very successfully lobbied the legal system to change the definition of what's in the best interest of children to now being that they spend 50% of the time with both parents, even though there's actually no evidence that that is actually what's in the best interest of children.
And again, in the dominant discourse perspective, what they've done is co-opt the idea of best interest of the children and hidden men's rights underneath that. So it's kind of code for men's rights or fathers' rights. It's not actually best interest of the children. Yeah, and it was absolutely taken for granted that the primary parent in the relationship would continue to be the primary parent outside the relationship. And the juxtaposition to all the evidence and research right now around attachment, right? It's like, well, there's that research, but that's not being applied in this context either. And breaking some of those attachments with the child and primary parent, I think we're going to see lots of detrimental impacts as we see this generation grow up.
Yeah. And partly we say, it hasn't always been this way in the hope that it's not going to stay this way.
Right.
Exactly.
We're in a very challenging time in terms of what's going on in family court right now, but we do see signs where some things are shifting in some places in the world, not so much in our province, British Columbia, but in some other places away from some of what is happening right now.
Yeah.
And the other irony is that he, in many ways, abdicated responsibility as a parent during the relationship, leaving her as primary parent, even if in the honeymoon stages, he promised to be an active co-parent with her. And so she's done all of that parenting. And then as soon as they're separated, abusers like raise this concern that she's not a fit mother.
Right.
And so again, we were meant to talk about it later, but just the common sense, forget the research, common sense tells us that just doesn't make any sense, that, you know, that you're okay to be the primary parent now, but then all of a sudden you're not.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
certainly we hope that judges at some point can see the kind of the game here and the manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's so heartbreaking for women to know that their kids are being hurt and confused by what's happening, and that it's really hard for women to find any resources that can help them to protect their children. So often the system, things like child protection services, hold a really high standard for what mums need to do, while holding a really low standard of what dads need to do. And just to share a few examples of that women regularly tell us that the kids come back from dad, I mean, not in okay shape mentally, emotionally, but also often hungry. Like they're picking them up late at night at bedtime and they haven't had dinner. Women report that their children are dehydrated, often that they're filthy. Some women say like the whole week they're with their dad, they don't ever brush their teeth during that week. They've watched movies or played videos that are completely not age appropriate. And then also we hear stories about sometimes actually really serious health issues, which just really points to how extreme this can be. Children who are having seizures, like the child has a medical issue and the dad is not administering the medication properly or in the way that it's supposed to happen, or the child has really significant food allergies, but the dad will give those foods to the children. And the medical system sees this happening, but gets told by legal counsel not to take a stand on it.
I mean, everybody's afraid of him, right?
Yes,
Like they've seen his behaviors. They know enough that this is not going to go well if they take a side.
Yeah. A writer, Barry Goldstein's written quite a bit on this. And one of the things he points to is that even good professionals try to help the weaker parent out of a mistaken sense of fairness. And we really see this, that when women go to court raising concerns about that the dad is not, administering the medication or whatever it is, the court response is, well, we have to give him time, we'll give him another he's had 6 months to learn this. Let's give him another 6 months to learn this kind of bolstering this weak parent. And Goldstein, I think, says so well, he says, it's such a mistaken sense of fairness because it's not fair to children that they be saddled with the inferior parent, right? Like, how is that in the best interests of the child, right?
It's kind of like an unethical experiment, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, where the subjects are not consenting to it.
Yeah, and we don't experiment on children.
No, we do not ever experiment on children.
We are here.
Absolutely.
There's like sort of a big grand social experiment going on right now.
Yeah. We were so concerned when I was working at the Women's Hospital about what was happening in child protection that we gathered a number of professionals and began to work with the Ministry of Child Protection to try to create better guidelines to help workers, social workers, intervene on behalf of children and women. So child protection in cases of violence against women. And their document really begins with the idea that children are safer and more supported when mothers are safer and more supported. So the idea is there's an abusive person, and then there's the target, who's the woman, and the kind of secondary target, which is the kids. And so we need to protect that dyad. Child protection historically has taken the stand that they're representing children and advocates for children, as if those children are detached from a parent, particularly when the parent is protective. And so we're putting more resources into forcing children to be with an abusive partner than we are putting resources into protecting that dyad of women and children. The problem is, I think that that dominant discourse of child advocate is so deeply ingrained in the child protection system that they have a difficult time seeing the woman as like they are the primary protectors, and child protection is like a system that can come in and add some help or assistance to her. And that's a really different frame than how they're currently working.
Right. Yeah.
And there's a kind of overall refusal, and we've talked about this before, to adopt a gendered lens, to see that actually it's not the parents, but the parents are an abusive man and a woman who's experiencing abuse, but their lens only sees the parents as a unit.
Yeah.
And that's very problematic. When we were looking more deeply at those practices, one of the things we saw is that almost all files in child protection are opened up in a woman's name, not in the couple's name, because she's the one who comes forward. She's the one who stays active. She's the one that they can locate. But in a way, it kind of, again, adds more burden to the woman because it looks like she has a child protection file opened on her.
Right.
When we proposed that the woman has a case plan where she gets to see the children a lot, even if they do have to be removed temporarily, but she gets to see them a lot and still have primary parenting, and that his expectations are to go to parenting, to go to men's treatment program. So the idea of not having a plan for the two of them that's parallel,
The same,
but that they're different parts of the experience. And when we tried to train that around the province, there was a lot of resistance from child protection workers to see this as a gendered issue, to separate, to see women as being the protective parent, because the dominant discourse is she's not protecting her children.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yet the research, and it's a very controversial statement, but it's from the research, separating children and youth from their non-abusive mothers can be more damaging and traumatic than remaining with their mothers in the context where she is being abused. And again, he's taken all the good choices off the table. So these are the two choices that child protection has, is leaving the child in the context where they might be witnessing abuse, or removing the child and having these kind of secondary traumas and impacts of being removed from a protective parent. So the system is very flawed and really, again, not working in the best interests of children.
Yeah.
You're supporting mothering.
You're referencing a document that I think it's just really important that people know about. And
So we can put it in the show notes, but
Yeah.
it is the MCFD, Ministry of Children and Family Development in BC, Child Protection Guidelines in cases of violence against women.
Okay.
And it is actually their policy.
It is a policy. It's not a
though
guideline.
We're not finding that workers are following it, but it is actually their official policy.
Yeah. When we travel the province, Karen, I always check to make sure that the frontline workers are aware of the document, because it does seem like it's getting buried. Again, social workers practicing from an opinion, which is sort of the dominant discourse, rather than from research and from guidelines.
If we think back to the power and control wheel we talked about in episode 3, we're really talking about a piece of that where it's post-separation abuse. That's the layer in that power and control wheel that we're talking about. And so despite the dominant discourse where once a woman leaves, the abuse will stop, we're really seeing the abuser continues to abuse, but it's just in a different context. So now that they are separated, different tactics are being employed because he has less access to her as he did when she was in the home. So now the children are being used because he knows that will cause a lot of pain to her. He uses maybe a new partner that he has started a relationship with, or he's using social media and spreading a narrative about maybe her mental health issues, or he's sharing that he is a victim in all of this, and presenting himself as a charming, friendly, responsible, caring parent and person on the outside, while continuing to abuse and harass the woman. Well, another example is sending lengthy, scathing emails or text messages, using parenting app or parenting communications where it's really just an access to her again, or using other professionals to start to spin the narrative against her and really pushing her down in the same way he always did, just with different tactics being used and employed.
And sometimes more powerful, right? Because now he's got a judge on his side, and he's got like the parent coordinator on his side and the mediator. So there's even more power against her.
There are lots of people that he can recruit, right? And so he's really using the legal system to continue to abuse. And that's, we talked about litigation abuse in episode 3, but we're diving in a little bit more, particularly around the parenting part of it. And one of the ways to think about it is that, so he's no longer in the home, so he can't get at the woman quite so directly. And so he's using others to get at her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's going to leave her feeling incredibly isolated and as if nobody around her understands. And as we've said before, friends and others will say they don't want to pick a side. And yet in the context of abuse, not picking a side means that they're siding with the abuser. Neutrality protects the abuser, and it's a safety issue. Neutrality protects the abuser.
Like you're saying, neutrality really is protecting the abuser because it always leaves the woman with a little bit of that blame. They're not actually believing you by saying, I'm remaining neutral. They're saying, well, maybe there's another side of this story. And there's something that maybe is not being shared with me. Yeah. So neutrality is really protecting the abuser and telling you, I don't fully believe everything you're saying.
Yeah. Because if they did actually listen to a woman and they did actually believe what she said, how could they remain neutral? Because if you're an ethical person, you cannot remain neutral hearing those kinds of stories.
We've been talking about the legal system, but let's just go a little bit further into it. The thing that women always learn, and why would we ever know that until we were thrust into it, is that it is a nightmare to navigate.
Yeah.
So suddenly, you're going from trying to survive in an abusive relationship, you bring all those impacts in separation. You're exhausted and overwhelmed, and you're trying to sort out this parenting and reparative parenting. And now you're in court and you're getting applications and you're trying to find a lawyer that you feel understands you. And then he's using the courts. So there's high costs. He'll drag it out. As we've talked about, he makes frivolous applications over and over and over again, simply designed to harass and threaten.
Yeah.
And what women think is that at least the legal system is there. At least the police or the courts will support me because clearly this is happening. And it's so discouraging and disappointing for women to find out that this is not a system of justice. This is a system of rules.
Yeah.
And the rules were designed many, many, many decades ago based on patriarchal notions of rights, and that the courts are simply upholding patriarchy. That they're, and it's just so profoundly disappointing for women and terrifying at the same time. Right?
Yeah.
So they've got expensive lawyers. And again, we remember the days when women had access to lots of legal aid.
Right.
So at least they could counter all those frivolous applications through a lawyer. But now women run out of money. They borrow. We know lots of stories of women borrowing hundreds of thousands of dollars from family or using up all their savings or selling a home that they had before the relationship. So completely being like bankrupt, or they have to then acquire all this knowledge to represent themselves, which is another kind of vulnerability and just so much time that it takes for them.
Another aspect is that women are really shocked to discover that their partners will blatantly lie in court and lie in documents with seemingly no consequences. I think all of us from watching TV were left with this impression that you couldn't possibly lie in court.
Yeah.
But these guys do.
They do.
They lie and lie and lie. And sometimes their lies are found out even in court, and yet they just keep going, right?
But mostly they're believed, which is the shocking part, that there's no interrogation to some of their claims.
Right.
Yeah. And sometimes partners the abusive partner will choose to represent himself. And so then she's being cross-examined in court by him, and he can send her endless amounts of emails and affidavits and stuff because he's not paying for any of that, right? Yeah. And then other times, abusive men hire very aggressive lawyers to intimidate women. Women are just so pressed thin by the whole process. So many women describe, putting their kids to bed and then staying up till 2 a.m, trying to get all the legal documents in order. And then sometimes getting in front of a judge and sometimes getting in front of a judge and getting compassion and care and understanding and actual help. And sometimes getting in front of a judge and being so shockingly hurt with really ignorant comments, right? Everything comes down to that one person and and whatever they're bringing to the conversation, right?
Yeah.
Which is not an experience of abuse. They have probably never, they're privileged people in our society. They have not experienced a lot of being, probably very little experiences of being disempowered. Right. And so their perspective on life is a certain perspective.
Yeah. Good point.
And if 1 in 3 men are abusive, then, you think about 1 in 3 male judges being in that category as well. And so it's like when you say, what are they bringing to the judgment? We don't know, but they're at least bringing the dominant discourse.
Yes.
Maybe bringing even a stronger view than that.
Yeah. And sometimes we hear really shocking rulings from female judges. And, we might think, oh, well, a woman judge is going to be better. But I think for a woman to get to that position, she has had to align herself, right, with that dominant discourse, right? So
I do think it's important to say we aren't saying this true of every judge and every court employee because it isn't true of everyone. So we aren't making it a blatant statement about every single one of them. We just are trying to highlight some of the, what's the right word?
Realities?
The realities, the difficulties, the challenges that are being faced.
So women encounter lots of dead ends and disappointments. It can be extremely difficult for women to access the assets from the relationship. Sometimes men who are abusive will drag out the sale of the home that they own together for years, right? And make that very, very difficult. It can be very hard to receive child support or spousal support. So, overall, abusive men work really hard post-separation to ensure that their ex-partners are left financially devastated. And many of them will say that up front, right? Like, I'm going to make sure you have nothing, right?
They actually say that,
It appears that they would rather spend the money on legal fees than have her receive what our system actually just says is fair. There's actually quite clear guidelines on how assets are supposed to be divided, what child support should be based on both people's income. But they just drag things out and make it really hard to just access what women should simply be able to receive.
And I've even heard of stories where lawyers have given that as advice to the men. That they should do that.
Just keep
I know,
dragging
isn't
it
that
out.
shocking?
Yeah.
It's so gross. It's just disgusting. Just an example from a woman that I know, Alice. She was telling me just how devastating it was to her. Her ex-partner was serving her with these very frivolous applications, and in one particular year she had 15. And what that means is that once you're served an application, you have to respond, and you have a particular way that you have to respond, and there's time frame and everything. And she was working full time, and it ended up impacting her so much. She got disciplined at work, having in it was a 25-year career. She'd never been disciplined at work. She was always incredibly reliable and competent at work. And this was just so impactful on her. And she came to me sort of wondering what's wrong with me. And we worked through it and said, well, this is what's happening. And this is
fear and exhaustion, right?
Exhaustion. She's always waiting for the next the next application.
If it's 15, that's more than one a month.
More than one a month, exactly.
Yeah.
Shocking.
We've said earlier that both the abuser and the systems often collude to not allow women to protect their children. And we're finding more and more that the courts are failing in that regard. Women are often told by their lawyers to not mention the abuse in court. So talk about, we began the episodes by saying that this is an epidemic that's been silent, right? And it's part of, women are told, don't talk about the primary reason you're here because it might look prejudicial and it might look like you're not going to be a friendly co-parent or cooperative.
So I'd like to read this quote from a woman because I think it really amplifies and helps us understand the experience for women. This woman said, "My life is a living hell. My children are with their father half of the time. This means that every other week I have to send my small, vulnerable children to a man I'm terrified of. It's like sending your children down a dark alley to meet a monster. I'm afraid to go down that dark alley myself. That's why I left him. But I have to send my kids down that dark alley every week." And that is what our current system is demanding of women.
Yeah. And so back to the comment about being seen as a friendly parent, that the juxtaposition of her reality with this bizarre notion of being a friendly co-parent is just, it's like, what world are we in that's even possible, that we force a woman to not tell that story and instead put on this facade of trying to be agreeable and cooperative because she knows she'll be punished if she doesn't appear that way.
As well, we're hearing how many abusive men are working really, really hard to alienate the children from their mother. And I use that word alienate actually really intentionally. This can happen during the relationship, but is often usually done in an extreme way after
really
the separation and divorce. And that's that piece of that post-separation abuse we're talking about. So maybe he's telling lies to the children about their mom or working really hard to just sever that mother-child bond and connection and attachment. Really, in the context of abuse, mothers have well-grounded and justified reasons to want to limit that father-child contact. And we see that actually, this is a quote that's coming directly from the research that's from 2025. Simon Lapierre. I am very sorry for saying your name wrong because I know I did. But he's done some excellent research. And he says, in the context of abuse, mothers have really well-grounded and justified reasons to want to limit that father-child contact due to abusive behaviors that they've seen and threats to their own safety and their children's safety and well-being. Sometimes children are outright refusing to visit their fathers. And so this is a really, really challenging position to be in. And so going now into what we've heard as parental alienation claims. The concept of parental alienation, since it's come out, has been highly controversial. It emerged in the 1980s, with evidence suggesting that it's become increasingly popular in the last few years. And it's loosely defined as a dynamic where a child rejects one parent due to the other parent's behaviors. So scholars have since discredited the scientific validity and theoretical foundations of parental alienation discourses and practices, which it's still actually being widely practiced and taught. And taught to professionals as something that's scientific when we know the evidence is saying otherwise. And it is a widely used tactic, and it's being applied in a wide range of circumstances within the court systems. And I do want to say there is really active work being done by advocates across Canada right now to try and stop the use of these claims in the court system. And there's been a petition that's being signed by many of the advocates in this area that parental alienation can no longer and should no longer be applied in the context of violence and abuse.
Again, it's such a crazy field, isn't it? That somebody can just have an opinion or personal experience, and then suddenly it becomes the facts of and the framework for making all decisions. I mean, the basic tenet of parental alienation is that men have rights to their children with no requirement to be safe or to be an active, connected parent.
Right.
What we love about some of the work that some of the researchers are doing, in particular Barry Goldstein, has reframed parental alienation syndrome as alienation distraction tactic, because that's what it is. It's like if it's a counterclaim to the reality that she's a primary and protective parent. It's like, no, look over here. She's actually this, a woman who's trying to vilify me and harm me. So if I reframe it as I'm the victim here, then women get, again, sort of pushed into that role of the bad wife, the bad mother.
Right.
And so it is another tactic in all of those tactics that we've talked about. And it's just manipulation, but he's managed very successfully to manipulate the courts and all the kind of side hustle professionals around. And I think the thing about it that's so interesting is that it serves to discredit in a more powerful way than anything we've ever kind of encountered before, discredit women's claims. So no matter what a woman says, when she says there's abuse, under the frame of alienation, it's like she's just saying that to get back at me. So nothing she can say, we've caught her in such a double bind that there's nothing a woman can say about her truth that doesn't get vetted through this alternate reality that then discredits her. It's absolute nonsense. If we really looked at it in common sense, it's absolute nonsense. That we've talked about this, where abusive men demand that she looks after the kids while they're together, and then claims that they're bad mothers.
Yeah.
The proponents of parental alienation have convinced an alarming number of professionals that if a child does not want to spend time with him, the only possible explanation is alienation. That no one draws on the explanation that perhaps the father has a bad relationship with the child, and that the child has the intelligence and trusts themselves enough to see that I don't feel safe here and I don't want to be with him. So it's so interesting that we gravitate to the idea that it must be the woman planting these ideas rather than the father's actual behaviors that are alienating the child from him.
I think one point that I've heard from a lot of women, so if you talk to a couple and anyone listening, when you are parenting in a healthy two-parent dynamic, any father in that setting says, yeah, sometimes my child definitely sides with mom.
Right.
Like really just wants to be with mom.
Yeah.
My child is sick, they call for mom.
Yeah.
And so it's showing the common sense here is like, there is a good chance that child really is connected to mom and wants to be with mom because she feels or he feels safe and connected with mom.
Yeah, exactly.
And we certainly know stories of children who, whether it's that they have run away from dads because they're terrified and they run away, or they've even sometimes made statements, like we can think of children who in their early teens made statements. They call them views of the child report to psychologists about listing all the reasons why they don't want to go to dad's house, listing often it's about emotional safety and well-being or feeling neglected. Just recently heard a story about children being locked outside the house, left alone, young children left alone because dad wanted to sleep in peace. So the children were just locked outside for hours on end. So the children have reasons for not wanting to go there. But all of that, what the child might be saying in various ways and what the woman might be saying, all of it is like, no, the child's just been convinced that by this vindictive woman who's trying to alienate. And all the women I've supported over the years have said, like, if he was safe, I would feel fine about that. Right?
Oh, yeah.
But I'm terrified. Right?
Yeah, it's actually hard to believe that so many professionals have been honeymooned by the abuser and this kind of honeymooned by the narrative of parental alienation. And I think it just is another demonstration of how powerful the undertones of patriarchy are, that we so easily accept, a concept that makes no sense if you test it at all.
I think it really shows the parental alienation is really lacking in that scientific validity when we have the WHO stating every major health organization in the world has disavowed the concept, yet it is still used in family law proceedings by abusers as a tool to continue their abuse and coercion. Or we've also seen the UN write a massive report against this. And these aren't small organizations. These are international organizations discrediting the scientific validity of these claims. So one thing the research demonstrates is that the syndrome that Jill has pointed to has really two surprising characteristics.
Tongue-in-cheek.
It's allegedly perpetrated almost entirely by women. More than 90% of parents accused of alienating their children are mothers. And number two, it's male victims. And if you are not watching the video and listening, quote unquote, are disproportionately white and almost entirely higher socioeconomic status.
And that part is about that they can afford to go to court and do all this stuff, and that they will be believed in court because of their race. Right?
The result is thousands of children, and this is coming from an associate professor at the Faculty of Law in Auckland University. And she quotes, "Thousands of children will go to bed tonight in the court-ordered care of violent fathers because a judge accepted a diagnosis of a non-existent disorder."
Heartbreaking.
We've referenced Barry Goldstein before. One of the things he says, and I think just the clarity of that is so helpful, that any attempt for an abusive man to gain custody should be seen as frivolous.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This turns what we're actually seeing in the courts entirely on its head.
Mm-hmm.
So most women are looking to the courts in hopes of safety for themselves and their children. And we know what we've been sharing with you can be discouraging and heartbreaking, and that women's experiences are often discouraging and heartbreaking. And we're just really hoping that courts could rely on actual solid research rather than these unsubstantiated claims of alienation.
Yeah.
So we've mentioned already that so often women are ordered to share parenting time, and that looks often like 50-50, and are required to co-parent. So what does that really look like or mean when you're being ordered to do that with someone who's being abusive to you?
Well, here's one experience of a story from a woman. She says, "I sat at my desk staring at the email I had just received from my quote-unquote co-parent in response to a reasonable request to my co-parent to do his part in supporting our child. He isn't available," he says. "His new partner is not available either. My son is doing a program which requires parental participation for 1 hour on Sunday afternoons for 8 weeks, as well as 2 hours on a weekday evening. I'm already doing the weekday evenings, but I have another commitment on some of the Sundays, and I really needed him to do his share. I mean, it's not even his share when you look at the hours he will need to do compared to those I am doing. It's always like this. His needs and wants trump anything that I need and want, and even the needs and wants of the children. It is exhausting, discouraging, and maddening to have to try to mother my children with a man who is so entitled. When I tried to explain the situation to the program coordinator, they seemed uncomfortable at my telling them the truth of why his dad isn't able to attend the sessions with her. I know I look like I'm speaking badly about his dad. I end up looking like the bad parent."
If we dig in a little bit more to, what it might mean to co-parent, like co-parenting would require collaboration, communication, joint decision-making, shared goals that provide consistency for children, and of course, mutual respect and respectful dialogue. And so is that even possible with someone who sees himself as central, superior, and deserving?
Right.
Yeah. Right. And is using words as weapons, not to try to come to some kind of conclusion or make a decision.
Right.
And so this language of restorative parenting that we've coined here today, often women might also say that they sort of have to do parallel parenting.
Yeah.
That they just need to decide, okay, in my house, this is how things will be in my house. And I don't have any control over what he's doing over there in his house. Yeah.
I just am remembering a woman in one of our groups recently who really demonstrated what it means to have the best interests of the children. Her ex was with a new partner, and the kids loved her. She was really beautiful with them, really connected. And then they broke up. Surprise, surprise. And the kids were really grieving the loss of that relationship. And so she, even though that relationship hurt her and, she felt a little bit threatened by that the kids had this other lovely person, she called that person and invited her for lunch so that the kids could be with her. And it just brings me to tears thinking about it. Like, despite how hard it was for her, she reached out because she knew that the kids really needed that. I think that's such a powerful example of how women put the best interests of the children first.
Yeah.
And
That's
he
a great example.
Of course.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I wonder, Jill, if you might talk a bit about what you've called cottage industries that have sprung up around this idea of parental alienation. So the idea of parental alienation has gained a lot of favor in the courts. And then these service providers have built businesses off it.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so we have mediators, we have divorce coaches now, we have parent coordinators, we have reunification counseling, we have just basic couple and individual counseling, and all of those holding the dominant discourse, lawyers and judges, of course, holding the dominant discourse are all like kind of working from the parental alienation, working from a place of fairness, of equality, of shared parenting, of he has rights too. And so women now are paying enormous amounts of money to go through every hurdle. First, they have to see maybe a mediator first, maybe a divorce coach now first. And then the divorce coach can't work with them because she keeps saying it's abuse, and he keeps saying, I'm willing to work here. Right. And so the divorce coaches are ill-equipped to handle this, obviously. So then they're sent through their lawyer to mediation as a way which we wish and hope is true, that they don't have to go to trial, that they don't have to be in the court system where women can still have a bit of say in mediation about what's going to be okay and not okay. But those are very expensive processes. And then somewhere along the way, a parental evaluation is ordered, and that can be like $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. And after that, then likely they're going to go to trial because that's not solved enough. So the things are settled, and the kids really don't want to go with the father. He's calling parental alienation. They go back to court. Judge says, I'm ordering reunification. Even sometimes for the woman who has no interest in any form of supporting this process. So there's so many, again, junk science, based on junk science, of these services growing up as a way of further dominating women and their lives.
These other professionals so often align themselves with the man. And so the woman is not just dealing with him, but also dealing with threats from their reunification counseling people.
Yeah, they're often really not trained in the area, but claim that they've been trained in the area, and that they really get honeymooned by him and really do take a side. So it's fascinating to us how often we hear that we're neutral, but they actually very actively are taking his side and advocating for his right.
I think one way I think of these therapies, if we were to put someone on the street attempted to murder them, and then they go to trial, and now they have to face this person who attempted to murder them, we have so much empathy for that. Like, how is that person supposed to ever face the person that attempted to murder them? Say, serial murderer. And it's like sickening. It's sickening to think they have to face that person. And then the judge is like, you know what? I think it would be really good if you guys went to reunification therapy. I think it would be really good if we could get you back into the street together and you know,
and
friendly with each other. Where
see if you can work it out.
See if you can work it out. And meanwhile, that serial murderer has attempted to murder that person, and it's already impossible for them to see them. That's what it can feel like for these women.
And the woman has to pay for it.
Forgot to add that part.
And thousands of dollars.
And then if she says it's not working, then she's just not trying hard enough, or she's just really not wanting to be cooperative. She's undermining the whole process.
This is so heavy. And I think it can be really, really difficult to hear this episode if you have not yet heard any of this content, and you have not yet heard how difficult it can be to face the abuse after separation and divorce. Many women have a difficult time finding allies in their struggle to protect their children from their fathers of abuse. This doesn't mean that there are none. And we have heard many, many, many stories from women who have incredible allies that hear her story and want to do all they know and can do to protect the safety of both her and the children. So there is incredible supports out there. We also realize that a lot of this information today is quite shocking and very, very heavy, and can be another layer of loss that just compounds on the losses that have been already experienced. So one thing that I have found very helpful for myself is connecting with others who are also walking through the same journey, or have done so before. It allows you to feel heard, connected, and not so alone and crazy. I've also found really healthy outlets for my grief. This means I'm allowed to actually grieve. I'm allowed to actually feel everything that I'm feeling. For me, that's been my faith practice, or going horseback riding, or walking in nature. Being here in this incredible setting is the garden outside, these windows that many of you cannot see. And just walking and digging your hands in dirt can be incredibly healing and allow you to be letting out some of the emotion. Does anyone here also have another example of a way to just have that outlet to experience all that you're feeling?
Well, I'm glad you love my garden, because that's what I do for healing, is to be in my garden and to grow things and see the seasons of growth. And just the aesthetic of it, to have something beautiful around us is so important. The color and the vibrancy and the uniqueness. Like, think of all the shapes of flowers that there are and all the colors that nature produces.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Finding a little moment of joy. I call them glimmers. I'm not the only one that calls them glimmers, so I'm not taking credit for that language. But finding a moment in your day that gives you a little bit of joy and a little bit of peace, and that can be anything. That can be looking at a flower. That can be seeing a rainbow. That can be that first taste of hot coffee in the morning, and can actually really lift your nervous system response to allow you to continue to navigate these difficult waters. You do not have to navigate these waters alone. Add women into your life raft. You are not alone in this, and I really hope that that comes across. If you do want more information, please head to our website at whenlovehurts.ca. If you are a professional listening to this and wondering how you can start a support group or helping others who are walking through this, When Love Hurts offers a training for professionals, and there is information available on the website as well. And we really do encourage you to create groups across the country and across the world to support women and allow a place for women to come together to support each other in that. I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who's already using the hashtag WhenLoveHurts, WLH community. It's been really great to see all the posts that are already being shared. Again, like, subscribe, and share this content. We appreciate all of the support already. This season was supported by the generosity of MCC Canada, and we would love to continue with this podcast. So if you would like to support our next season, head to our website and connect with us. Thank you, everyone.